Okay, practicing our relative dating. Remember, we're not trying to find the exact number of years ago that something happened, but rather just what event happened first, which happened second, and so on to the more recent times. Basic procedure. Number one, find the lowest layer in the diagram. Assume that it was originally laid flat and horizontal, and it was the first thing to be laid down. Number two, see if any higher layers follow the same profile as the lowest layer. They would be made next. Number three, any bending or tilting would be done later. Number four, if layers are at different angles, then erosion most likely occurred between layers being made. Number five, if there is not a single best way to do a step-by-step procedure that works in all cases, you need to approach each problem with the detective's eye and use some reasoning. Okay, so here we have a current diagram of the current rock layers going on in a certain area, and we assume then that the very first thing that happened was that the lowest layer was made. So we have a layer here, and it's symbolized by dashes going horizontally. The second thing that happened then was the next layer up, and it has little dots. So we have the first layer, and then we have a second layer put on top of that, and it has these dots. The third thing that happened would be that the top layer was made, and we assume that all of these layers are nice and flat. The lowest layer with the dashes, the second layer with the dots, and we have a third layer that also has dashes. Okay, now notice that this is going up a little bit, so is that, and so there must have been some bending going on. Number four, bending. And then lastly, we have a crack that formed. Cracks are always after the rock layers were laid down. So the fifth thing that happened then would be the faulting. So there we have the crack being formed and things sliding. So the first thing that happened was the bottom layer being laid down. The second thing was the middle layer laid down. And then number three, the top layer was laid down. And then we had bending, then we had faulting, and that's the end. In the second diagram, we're going to assume that the lowest layer was the first thing to be laid down, and as we go away from there, all of these have the same general shape, and so they were laid in consecutive order. The black layer here was third, the dash layer fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth, 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th. Lots of layers laid down there, and we assume that they were all laid down flat and horizontal. And then, after some period of time, number 14, the 14th thing to happen was some kind of a giant force bent all of these to be a hump in the middle. If that happened, we would have expected them to be bent uniform and have a hump for each one of these 13 layers. But we can see that here in layer number 6, is the only one that gets to be up and over. The others, layers 7, 8, 9, 10, have been cut off. So, after things were bent upwards, then we had erosion. Number 15, the 15th step in these events is erosion. Here we have this squiggly line that's at different angles to the rock layers. That symbolizes erosion happening. And that's the end of that one. The last diagram on this page, we assume the first thing that happened was that the lowest layer was laid down horizontally. That would have been that layer right there. And then this layer is on top of that, so this is the second thing that was made, and this is the third. And we assume that those three lines, or those three layers, were laid down horizontally and then tilted upwards at this angle, so some force was lifting up on that end, pushing it up. That is step number 4. Now, these should have gone way up, but here we have this zigzag line that's at different angles to the layers of rock, and so that represents the 5th thing that happened, a bunch of erosion. And after the erosion, now look, we have these flat layers of rock. So this one happened next, and then this one, and then that one, and then we're done. Okay, you try this one, see if you can get it. So pause the video and then try to fill in these blanks as to which things happened first, second, third, fourth, all the way up to 9th. And then start the video when you're done to see if you did it right. Okay, the oldest thing would be the lowest layer, M. That was laid down. The second thing then would be L, then K, then C, then O. L, K, C, and O. And we assume that all 5 of those layers were laid down flat and horizontal. And so number 6 is to tilt. And number 7, we have this zigzag line at different angles to the rock layers, so we have erosion. And then after the erosion, we have layer B being laid down. And we can see at the top here that some of B has been eroded away. We have different angles. So we have new erosion. With that in mind, you can now do the homework.